All right. Good morning, everybody. Finally Friday, and it was a beautiful day yesterday. It's interesting to see what today will be like. It's supposed to be a little colder tomorrow, but welcome. Slurping coffee with Jesus. So we are in the Old Testament book of Second Kings, chapter 14, and so we're going to wrap the week up with another piece of the Kings. We're going to speak a little more detail about something we glossed over yesterday. There's going to be a battle between the northern and southern kingdoms. It's covered in Second Chronicles 24. I think 24. I think it's in 25. But today we're going to see it in chapter 14 as well, because now we're going to see it from the other side. All right. Yesterday we saw it, I believe, from the side of the Israelites, and so it was a gloss over for them because they won. But today we're going to see how that unfolded and how it happened. And we're going to see a couple valuable lessons. All right. Let's see. Let's give it a minute for see who's going to join us. And so we're going to watch. We're going to bounce back and forth between chapters now. In chapters from Israel and Judah. This is going to pick up in the previous chapters. Almost whole chapters were dedicated to just one kingdom. That's going to begin to change a little bit. All right. And so, but they're still connected to each other in the literary style of the author of Two Kings. So, in the X year of this king of Israel, then we talk about this king in Judah, so that they're tied together because they are one people. And this is something that I hope we haven't lost in the readings of Second Kings, in First and Second Kings. These are one people. Together, they are God's people. All right. So with that, let's go ahead and get to it. Again, we are in the Old Testament book of Second Kings, chapter 14. In the second year of Jehoash, a son of Jehoahaz, king of Israel, Amaziah, son of Joash, king of Judah, began to reign. So we see the connection between Israel and Judah. He was 25 years old when he became king, and he reigned in Jerusalem 29 years. It's a pretty healthy reign, almost 30 years. His mother's name was Jehoadan. She was from Jerusalem. He did what was right in the eyes of the Lord, but not as his father David had done. In everything, he followed the example of his father Joash. The high places, however, were not removed. The people continued to offer sacrifices and burn incense there. Now, so this king's father, Joash, was the one that the temple was rebuilt, and so we see this king again in Judah being fairly well, I'm not going to say close to God, but fairly good. And so, but the high places are still not gone. So the people of Judah are still worshiping other gods. All right, and so the infrastructure of these places has not been destroyed. Now, that's going to set some things up. And so in verse 5, after the kingdom was firmly in his grasp, he executed the officials who had murdered his father, the king. All right. If you remember, King Aram had come down and, had done some things. And so he won 3 battles. Remember the story of the 3 arrows yesterday and about faith and how, the king stopped, Jehoash stopped. And so we see some things here after the fact. Now, so the king was assassinated. So he killed again, seems like a smart play. Again, we watched almost every king, especially the kings of Israel, when a new dynasty came in, they destroyed everybody from the old family. We had Athaliah down in Judah trying to wipe out the complete bloodline of King David. All right. And so this is not new, but what is new is what's coming next. Yet he did not put the children of the assassins to death in accordance with what is written in the book of the law of Moses, where the Lord commanded, quote, parents are not to be put to death for their children, nor children put to death for their parents. Each will die for their own sin. All right. And so men are not meant to execute this way. All right. And so we are not judges of generational sin. All right. Now, this hasn't stopped prior kings. And so this is still a thing we see today. Consider abortion. All right. The sins of the parents are then by the parents themselves laid upon the child. This is part of the horrendousness of it. He was the one who defeated 10,000 Edomites in the Valley of Salt and captured Selah in battle, calling it Joktheel, the name it has to this day. All right. So again, later on, we're going to see some stories about this more detail about this battle. And so what's amazing is this king, Amaziah, I have to look because his son has a name very similar to his. And reading the whole thing, you start to get the names turned around. So bear with me. I apologize if I get somebody incorrect. And so Amaziah, he pulled together 300,000 Israelites to fight these 10,000 Edomites. All right, this is a tremendous. So he pulled together quite a bit. All right, and so because of that, the victory really isn't as amazing as you think. The logistics of the victory are incredibly powerful. Give me a second. I want to double check something really fast here. Too far back. Jehoash sins of the father. And so we got to remember that although 300,000 against 10,000, I can only imagine what the Edomites must have thought, and they were not a major nation. And so we see that quite a bit. I'm looking for Hazael. All right, I'll just have to check my notes. And so he has this victory. And in fact, he actually had another 100,000 in mercenaries. And, through prayer, God tells him, don't use those to fight other Israelites. All right. Now, so he's won this great battle. Now, then Amaziah, all right, we're talking about Judah. Amaziah, king of Judah, sent messengers to Jehoash, son of Jehoahaz, the son of Jehu, king of Israel, with this challenge: come, let us face each other in battle. All right. Now, we got to remember that Judah has been decimated, all right, by Aram. Remember, they were left with only 50 chariots, 100 horsemen, X amount of infantry. And so Amaziah is really taking advantage of a hard situation with his northern neighbor and their fellow people, just two different kingdoms. All right. And so this would be like Maryland and Delaware fighting. But nonetheless, these people have had a peace between each other, and that's now being sundered by Judah. And so, but Joash, king of Israel, replied to Amaziah, king of Judah, and this is great. Quote, a thistle in Lebanon sent a message to a cedar in Lebanon. All right, so they're both in Lebanon. They both acknowledge they're the same people. That's what the message is saying. A thistle, Judah, to a great and mighty cedar, Israel. All right, give your daughter to my son in marriage. This is what the thistle is saying to the cedar. Then a wild beast in Lebanon came along and trampled the thistle underfoot. You have indeed defeated Edom, and now you are arrogant. Glory in your victory, but stay at home. Why ask for trouble and cause your own downfall and that of Judah also? So this is a pretty interesting letter response back to the request to come to war from Israel back to Judah in response. And so they're both Israelites, but the Israelites look down at Judah, and Judah always has seen Israel as an evil cousin. They don't follow the God. They don't, as they stood up as a new nation and breaking off from, King David's Israel, they created a whole new religion, which was just a degree off. It had just enough of the old in it to make people accept it. And yet it was so off that God probably loathes it. And he's held these people accountable and will continue to. But that poison is also spread back into Judah, despite their arrogance, despite a few good kings. Not many. We're about to see a good king. And so this is the argument that Judah. Now Judah's weak. They've been plundered by Aram, Syria, now known as Syria, and God has used Syria to come against them. And we're seeing the third generation of Jehu's, the promise of God to Jehu that his generation through the fourth would rule Israel. So we see the third. And so he's responding, look, you guys just need to stay south. So again, he knows his military condition. So there's a lot of bravado in this. But we see how both nations see their other half of the great nation of Israel, not the northern kingdom of Israel, but Israel in its total, David's Israel, God's Israel. Amen. It's an interesting response. Now, Amaziah, however, would not listen. So Jehoash, king of Israel, attacked. All right. So now Israel, weakened beyond belief, they're not waiting anymore. All right. You want to pick a fight? We'll bring it to you. And they do so. He and Amaziah, king of Judah, faced each other at Beth Shemesh in Judah. Judah was routed by Israel, and every man fled to his home. Jehoash, king of Israel, captured Amaziah, king of Judah, the son of Joash, the son of Ahaziah at Beth Shemesh. Then Jehoash went to Jerusalem and broke down the wall of Jerusalem from the Ephraim gate to the corner gate, a section about 400 cubits long, which is 600 feet. That's a long section of wall torn down. Probably didn't happen right away. You got to chip at the stones, pull the stones down, horses, donkeys, the whole 9 yards. All right. But there's a scar now in Jerusalem. He took all the gold and silver and all the articles found in the temple of the Lord and in the treasuries of the royal palace. He also took hostages and returned to Samaria. So this much lighter force. And this is why context is really important. We had to do a little research in other scriptures to understand that Judah had 300,000 men. Again, Israel probably couldn't muster that much because of the constant war they've been at with Aram, all right, and a few others. And so now, but this much, much smaller force, because God was punishing Judah, used them to punish Judah for their arrogance. All right. And so they took all the money, they raided the treasury, they raided the temple, because again, they don't serve the same God. The Israelites are pagans now. God's people. Let that sink in. And then they tore this huge section of the wall down. So now they're more they're not defenseless, but it's much harder to defend a broken wall than it is a wall that's up, obviously. And there's a constant reminder that they were defeated completely, heavily. All right. And the king even captured. So this is what happens when we move against God's wishes. And so in our lives, we're often in prayer and we think we know what we want to do. We think we know what we should do. And instead of waiting for the Lord to guide us, we move in a direction that oftentimes will not be healthy for us. And although we know in our heart of hearts that we believe we know what's healthy for us, God always does. All right. Hard to believe, hard to remember at times, but nonetheless, truth, full truth. Now, as for the other events of the reign of Joash, what he did and his achievements, including his war against Amaziah, king of Judah, are they not written in the book of the annals of the kings of Israel? Jehoash rested with his ancestors as was buried in Samaria with the kings of Israel, and Jeroboam, his son, succeeded him as king. I apologize. Jeroboam is the third generation. All right. And so yesterday we had a glimpse of this battle. All right. And we were talking about Israel. And so we have a literary, we've had a flow that now is beginning to change. So we talked about Israel, and then we came back and we talked about Judah, and then we came back to the same point in time to talk about Israel to transition to the next Israelite king. Now, Amaziah, son of Joash, king of Judah, lived for 15 years after the death of Jehoash, son of Jehoahaz, king of Israel. As for the other events of Amaziah's reign, are they not written in the book in the annals of kings of Judah? And so most likely he was kept as a captive until Joash died. All right. And so other hostages were there. The wall was ripped down. Judah was kind of rudderless, no king. I'm assuming the elders were maintaining things, probably his council, his advisors. And so we see a huge influence of Israel on Judah for an extended period of time. Now, so he's back. All right. So this is the transition. I need to explain this because all of a sudden we're going to start talking about Amaziah again. They conspired against him. This is Amaziah, king of Judah. They conspired against him in Jerusalem, and he fled to Lachish, but they sent men after him to Lachish and killed him there. He was brought back by horse and was buried in Jerusalem with his ancestors in the city of David. Now, Lachish is interesting because that was the first city of Judah that began to embrace idolatry. All right. And it's interesting that that's where Amaziah fled to. All right. And so I don't know if he fled there thinking, maybe he could get some help from the pro-Israelite people that lived there, or the pro-idolatries. It implies, it's an assumption, that he was into idolatry himself, and that he hoped that like-minded people would protect. I got to sneeze. Would protect it. And see, I didn't need the government to tell me how to cover my mouth. And so we see him flee. In the end, they kill him because of the disaster that he brought upon him. And so heavy is the crown for kings. And so God has said way back in 1 Samuel with the first king, Saul, as the people yelled for Saul to be king, you're going to have a king. Just remember, I will hold you accountable for both what the king does and or what the people do. All right. And so I love the people. I love all of you, but either or both of you can bring down judgment upon you. And so this king, at great peril to the people, again, Israel wiped their forces out. And so if he had mustered 300,000 men and they destroyed them so completely that they were able to raid the city at will and to have enough peace, because there was no enemy, to tear down 600 feet of that wall, there's no military left. That's on a magnitude of 250, 300, all 300,000 men killed, because God was in this on the side of the Israelites to punish the people of Judah. And so the people did suffer. Temples raided. All right. These are the people who are trying to be more like, to live more in obedience to God, the living God, than obviously the Israelites are. But God uses the Israelites in this, and that can't be forgotten. All right. And so in your life, who do you worship? What do you worship? Where do what do you give your money to? Do you tithe? Can the fruit of the Spirit be seen in your life by Christians and non-believers? And so this is what we have to ask. Morning, Audrey. This is what we have to ask ourselves. And so the king of Judah, who had been like his father, another good king from a worldly perspective, attempted to obey God, but nonetheless not in completeness. All right, which without Jesus, candidly, none of us can do. None of us can follow the law. That's why Jesus fulfills the law. That's why the law is moved from something we have to meditate on day and night to being written into our hearts and minds, all right, through the Spirit, through the blood of Christ. And so this is what we got to remember. This is what separates us today in the way we live from the Israelites of yesterday, and why the Israelites of yesterday are so important to all of God's people, Jew and Gentile, today. Amen. Now, it closes out with, and all the people of Judah took Azariah, who was 16 years old, and made him high king in place of his father Amaziah. He was the one who rebuilt Elath and restored it to Judah after Amaziah rested with his ancestors. Now, this took me, I missed a footnote, and I spent probably quite a while unpacking Azariah. He's also known as Uzziah. All right. And so we're going to see Uzziah coming up, and I just want to, and I'll call it out again. But he is he's the same person as Azariah, son of Amaziah. All right. And that threw me for a loop. I had to jump down a ton of rabbit holes, because all of a sudden Uzziah pops up. And so they change his name. But this son of this king who brought disaster is going to be, outside of David, probably the next best king of Judah. And so we see this cycle kind of flow, but with Uzziah, so we see David at this end, we see Solomon, and then we see this, and we'll see a couple good spikes until we get to Uzziah. We're not quite back up to David, but so that's what we're going to kind of end next week. We'll be chucking through 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. And so we'll have 2 weeks of 2 Kings left. I think it goes to chapter 24. All right. But we see this constant process of refinement, of candidly obey. It's just like Judges. It is identical to Judges. So the people, They embrace God. They understand they're sinning, they're sinners, they're lost without God. They embrace God. God blesses His people, and then amidst the prosperity that comes from God, not men. And I'm not talking about a false prosperity, but I'm talking about a legitimate blessing on the land. Things are good. Amidst the blessing, people begin to forget where the blessings come from. And as a generation is born into the blessing and possibly gets through it, much like America today, have several generations, they forget what hard times are and they begin to seek other things through themselves and begin to believe that they are the reason things are good. And this is where we're at today. We're going to solve problems like hunger, racism, hate, things that are inherent in our nature. And so this is the cycle that's being repeated. We've been, again, unabashedly, we're probably the most blessed people that the Lord has ever put on this planet in His creation, even above His own people, the Israelites. All right. Nonetheless, we have forgotten the source of our blessings. We've forgotten the source of everything that this nation has provided, this wonderful land, this great flexible people who've welcomed others, who have conquered sins that led the rest of the world in conquering sins, i.e. like things like slavery, which still exists today in greater numbers, actually. And so we see all these things. And so without an understanding of the Old Testament, the message of the cross becomes diminished. And so without the Old Testament, the need for the cross isn't even understandable to non-believers. So this is kind of why we're going to spend so much time seeing what God's very own people did so that we can understand our aspect in our lives. I hope that makes sense. All right. So that wraps us up today. Just in time for a glorious weekend. And so next week, like I said, we'll go 15 to 20. I believe there's 24 chapters, so we'll finish up the week after, the first full week of March, hard to believe. And then we'll roll into Chronicles. Amen. Audrey, I hope all is well. And so with that, let me just say I love you guys. I pray that the peace of the Lord, the peace that allows us to never lose sight of where our blessings come from, where the very breath in our lungs comes from, and that we always honor the author and the giver of those things, that every blessing, every gift, every breath we take is from, for, and of God. May that peace rest upon us and our homes. And until we meet again, some of you Sunday, for some of you Monday, may the Lord bless you and your families with safety and good health. Amen, amen, and amen. All right, my friends, I love you guys. Have a great weekend. And remember, share the gospel, share your testimony and what Jesus has done to change you from the inside out. Amen. Amen. All right, my friends, have a great weekend. Audrey, have a good time. Take care.